It's another lunch fund. Seems like we're doing a lot of these. Can I ask you, anybody that has a cell phone, please put it in silent mode, so they don't get interrupted speakers. Are there any announcements from anyone about almost anything that's relevant to you here? You guys need to work on this. I know the boat people have lots of stuff.
What about the website?
Which website? Anyhow, before I introduce our speaker for today, I would like to present a 7-minute segment from Sunday morning's CBS Sunday Morning program featuring our presenter. We had a celebrity among us, so here we go.
We're off on a Sunday drive, and not just anywhere. In Italy, where we join Seth Doane at the most beautiful car race in the world.
Quickly! This father-son duo came from California to race this tiny 1957 Fiat on the back roads of Italy. A graduation celebration for the classic car-obsessed David Healy. He and his dad Len set off among almost 100 others, practicing for a stunningly scenic race with roots stretching back nearly a century. Their car was the first off the starting line in 1957.
That was how this started, was he emailed me the newsreel and said, Joe owns this, we could do the Mille, and it was kind of like, oh, you're just using it for direction.
Their friend Joe Hurwich bought this Fiat specifically to race in the Mille. Mille means 1,000 in Italian, and Miglia is miles. This 1,000-mile race of classic cars on open roads goes from Brescia to Rome and back over 5 days.
It's the great race.
What makes this the great race?
Enzo Ferrari called it the most beautiful race in the world.
Yeah.
And we're here to find out if that's true.
This most beautiful race in the world began in 1927, and pausing for the war continued until a terrible crash in 1957 killed 2 drivers and 9 spectators. Tragedy dramatized in the 2023 film Ferrari. It's been back since the late 70s as it followed the speed limit rally of precise timed trials. Last year, more than 400 classic and vintage cars were accepted, including that Fiat 600 the Healys drove, and another car their friend Joe Hurwich bought, this 1931 Aston Martin. You buy a car, or in your case, cars, to get in.
It's not the person that gets in, it's the car. The car has to be either the original car that ran in the race between 1927 and 57, or it has to be the same model of a car that ran in the race.
It's Hurwich's 5th Mille after trying to get in for a decade. It's a bit of an obsession.
You sound like my wife.
We understood better. Go out for a spin. Maybe a little further if you don't mind. Have fun.
You might get hooked.
I might get hooked.
You're not a car guy?
I'm gonna need a new job to get really hooked.
Yeah.
The race was passing through villages just on your doorstep.
Growing up in Brescia, Francesca Perolin was raised on the Mille.
So make sure you check the next page.
Now she's the COO helping to run it.
And the car being raced could be your daily car.
But it's not exactly daily cars being raced today. What do you say to someone who says this all just feels out of touch with the world today, kind of underlines the inequality in the world?
Well, of course, some of the cars are expensive, but the secret of Mille is that it's the celebration of our history, and everyone can be part of. We have spectators on the road, they don't have to pay. And after all, you can take part into the Mille with the Fiat 600. You don't need a $20 million cars.
Cars cannot have any major modifications and need to be properly restored. We spoke near where they're checked and certified to race.
Mille Miglia is by now the largest motorsport event in the world.
Largest motorsport event in the world.
It is.
You think of Formula One?
No. We have more cars, we have more miles, we have more spectators on the road.
It's that dream of, if you've watched the Mille Miglia, you know, you're standing in the street and you see these cars going by and you think, oh gosh, I'd love to do that. Well, this actually makes it possible.
Debbie Travis, a British-Canadian TV personality, and her car-loving husband, Hans Rosenstein, have a villa in Tuscany not far from where the Mille Miglia passes by. Now, they host a week-long Mille Miglia-inspired classic car rally retreat for tourists, including Jim and JC Germani, who came from Osterville, Massachusetts.
The Ferrari, I've been wanting to drive that car ever since I was 7 years old.
What's better than driving a Ferrari through Italy?
It's a bit like being in kindergarten. I have to say to people, nobody's been in the Bugatti wants you to do this. So, you know, they get to drive usually 2 or 3 cars a day, so they're swapping as we go along their pit stops.
They wind along picturesque roads, including nearby Pienza.
The hardest thing for the driver is the scenery. It's so breathtaking, you know, but they've got to keep their eyes on the road.
Back in Brescia, eyes are on these cars as they turn the streets into an open-air museum. Jack Broomall and Lisa Barrow first did a test run at a scaled-back Mille Miglia rally in the U.S.
This one is more intense. We're still married, so that's good.
Check in again in about a week.
A friend from the U.S. helped them borrow this 1955 Alfa Romeo.
And where can you go and walk down the street and see half a dozen Bugattis and 4 Boeing Mercedes all being driven, right? It's the neatest dynamic car show ever.
That's a big part of this. These cars are not sitting. They're not under lights. They're on the road.
These are not cars that are maintained in someone's elegant garage at home. I like that element of it, that the cars are driven. And they're driven hard. They're driven like they were meant to be in the day.
This journey is also a test of driver's endurance in these old cars, often without much protection from the elements. Over 1,000 miles, Jack Bromell and Lisa Barrow did remain married. We saw Joe Hurwich passing through Rome in his Aston Martin, accomplishing the same goal that David and Len Ely set.
We're just gonna have fun. Our goal is to finish.
Finish they did. A test of mechanics, will, and despite cheering fans lining the roads, humility.
I mean, the Italians love the car. It's amazing, you know. They don't care about us, but which is perfectly fine. The car is the star.
Yeah, that's a good piece.
That's the beginning. So, as you probably figured out, our presenter for today is Joe Hurwich. Almost 17 years ago, Joe had a bucket list item. Excuse me. Cough all the time. Drive the Mille in Italy. It took him a long time to achieve it, but he has now done this, I guess, 5 times now. He has also done the Gran Premio Nuvolare, which he will speak about today, the Canosa, and the U.S. Mille warm-up multiple times. If there is an automotive tour anywhere, Joe is likely to be participating with one of the cars from his outstanding collection. Please welcome Joe Hurwich.
Thanks, Barry. Can everybody hear me? Sometimes I don't. A little louder. How about now?
Good, you're good.
Okay. I'm gonna kind of walk. Tell me if I'm getting in your way? Are you okay? I'm not sure there's much I have to say after watching that video. I'll tell you a little about the history of it. Last May, I was contacted by the Mille and asked if I wanted to participate in a CBS Sunday morning video. Not a show that we generally watch, but apparently it's a pretty big show. Both Beth and I have heard from probably 20 or 30 or 40 people that we didn't tell we were going to be on this show who saw it. But anyway, I had a call from Seth Doan, the interviewer, in May to chat a little bit about what he wanted to do and what he wanted to interview. I realized that the Fiat, because it's a very important car, even though it's a Fiat 600, it's an important car because it was the first car to start the race in 1957. And as I'm sure most of you know and you heard, that was the final race, the accident race, the race that the movie Ferrari was about. Not only that, but it had a modified motor. His good friend Carlo Abarth pulled the 600 motor out before the race, and then
We're off on a Sunday.
I thought I could get back to the shot with the three cars on it, but anyway. Sorry? 3 times back? You see the Fiat here. His friend Carlo Abarth put a 750 motor in it. Or you mechanical types would understand this, put some hot cams and a few other things in it. He didn't finish that year. However, he had, in the splits for the first 200 miles, he averaged 100 kilometers per hour, 60 miles per hour. In this car that started out with 30 horsepower. And this is going through the towns and the mountains in northern and central Italy. Anyway, enough about that. I knew that my car and my partner and I were not going to be the stars of this TV show video. Once he saw the Fiat and understood what it was, and once he saw David, the son of my friend Len, and that it was a college graduation present for him, they were obviously going to be the stars, and that was just fine. What I really want to talk to you about today is a little bit of compare and contrast the 3 European events that I've been in, the 2 or 3 events I've been in the United States, and a couple others that I'm familiar with. I want to take you on a journey through the heart of Italy, and that's where most of these are. There's generally central Italy. I'm going to show you a slide in a few minutes. But these are the cars that I've driven in the Mille and in these other Italian cars. The Fiat you saw on the video. The Aston Martin is a 31. You saw that briefly on the video. I drove the Fiat twice in the Mille, and then in 21, or actually in 20 during COVID, I bought the Aston Martin sight unseen because it was COVID period. Closed my eyes, signed a check, and the guarantee was if the car didn't get into the Mille, they would give me my money back. The first time I saw that car was when it was being unloaded from a truck in Brescia in 2018. You know, right-hand drive. Luckily, we're driving on the correct side in Italy, but it's still a right-hand drive car. Never driven it. Took a chance. And it's a great car. I love it. I've been driving it in these events since 21. The upper car is a 1938 MGSA, which I fondly refer to as my Rolls-Royce wannabe. It's 16 and a half feet long, and it crapped out on me, and I lost the clutch in 2018, and I ended up taking the place with my son and my son-in-law in the Fiat for the rest of that race. I buy cars with my eyes, and to me that's just a gorgeous car. And a little tough on those Italian corners. Frequently you had to do 2 and 3 point turns to get through them. Turning radius is about like I want to say a semi, but semis because they're articulated and have pretty good turning radius. You know, I could maybe make a turn in the length of this room. That's about it. Anyway, I want to, you know, give you some comparisons and so forth of what's going on. Those three events are three of the most iconic motor vehicle rallies in Italy right now. The Mille is probably the most iconic car event in the world. I don't know, some people might say the Peking to Paris is, but as you heard Francesca say, it is the most watched motorsport, or excuse me, the largest motorsport event in the world, which is pretty surprising, but it is. The Gran Premio Nuvolari is a little bit like a wannabe for the Mille Miglia. Started as a one-day event, and I think most of you are enough car people that you understand about that, and you saw the movie. You know that in 1956, the record was set in a Mercedes that averaged 100 miles an hour through all the towns and mountains. The Grand Prix Nuvolari isn't as large, okay? It was started in 1991. And the Mille obviously goes back to 1927. It was re-inaugurated in 1971, I believe it was, 72. They've extended over the years from one day, which the race was forever, but they extended when they came back as a rally, started as 3 days. When I started doing it, it was 4 days. The last two times I did it, it was 5 days. It's now about 1,300 miles. And as she said, there's over 400 cars that participate, and actually it's even a little more than that. There's 400 classic cars, and now they've got a modern Ferrari section that goes out early, and a modern Mercedes section, I think, that goes out early. The Nuvolari is only about 250 to 300 cars, and it covers some of the same ground in central Italy that the Mille does. It's a gorgeous race. The primary differences are the Mille gets millions, literally millions of people to come out and watch. They stand by the side of the road. You'll see in some of my slides later. The Nuvolari doesn't get nearly as many people to watch. It's not as famous, but it's of the same ilk and really, really a fun event. The Terra di Canossa, which is the third event that I've done now twice. I've done the Nuvolari 4 times. It covers about 800 miles in 2.5 days. The longest day is 11 to 12 hours now. The longest day on the Mille is 15 to 16. There's two days back to back that are 15, 16-hour days. It's grueling. You've got to be in shape, and particularly if you're driving an older car. Well, they're all older cars. Right? An older car like my Aston, the 31, those are not the easiest cars in the world to drive. They don't exactly have power steering, and the brakes are a little iffy from time to time. But they're fun to drive. I like it. The Terra di Canossa is the shortest of the three, at only about 360 miles. It's also less than 100 cars. It's a very personal event. You get to chat with everybody. The days are short. You're back at the hotel, and you stay in one hotel for the whole time. You're back at the hotel in time for cocktails. And it's so typically Italian that they take a coffee break in the morning, scheduled, where they stop and the organization pays for everybody's coffee. And they take a second one in the afternoon. You know, at the Mille, you're lucky if you could stop long enough to have lunch or dinner. And your time in bed is somewhere between 3 and 5 hours, depending on how things are going. But the Terra di Canossa is very civilized. It's a 5-star event. They stay in very fancy hotel. There's a new one for this year. I'm going back in May. Typically, they're on the Mediterranean, within about 100 yards of the beach. There's just a beautiful, beautiful area of Italy along the water. that must run for, I don't know, 100 miles maybe. I've done it a couple of times in the Mille where you go all the way down on the way to Rome. So that gives you a little bit of the differences and the things you have.
We're off on a
When you get to the Mille, this is the first thing you're going to see. This is the entrance to the scrutineering building, which we would call registration building, and they take that very seriously. Your car's got to be exactly what it said it was. You've got to have all of the exact papers. If you don't, they bounce you, and they're not shy about bouncing you. They don't care how far you came from. If you don't toe the line and have what they want, you're out. You never start. So this is kind of a dramatic entryway in. There's another door where the cars go in. Actually, it's the same kind of door, but they can open it in the center wide enough for the cars to go through. And once you enter the building, and this is the building, no motors. Now, you might wonder why you can't drive around to get to your parking spot and so forth, but think about that. Most of you people have older cars. They're all belching, one form or another, of carbon monoxide, or CO or whatever, or NOx. And if you put 400 and some in one spot and people are driving around, nobody would be alive to start the race the next day. So this is a map of the 2014 event. Starts up here in Brescia. We drove from Brescia to Turin, which was not a very interesting drive. It's the first time they've done that since I've done it. It was a little boring. There was too much freeways and a lot of industrial areas around there. From there, we went to Viareggio along the coast, which is not that far from where the Terra di Canosa runs. That wasn't a terribly long day. I think it was about 10 hours, 11 hours. These don't look like very large distances, but they're going off into the hills every 5 or 10 miles, and you would never find these roads on your own. They're all small 2-lane roads going up into the hills in the small towns. You're going to see some of them in a bit. From there, we went down to Rome and back from Rome to this town, which is actually a suburb of Florence. And those 2 days are 15, 16 hours. Those are the killers. Somewhere along the line, you get a bit of an adrenaline push, and you're sure before that you're never going to make it, and everybody does. Nobody falls asleep at the wheel. You make it through these things, and you're happy to get to the end of that day. Flop into bed. You might or might not even have dinner. Get up after 3 or 4 or 5 hours and do it again. Then the final day, back to Brescia. Just a short day, probably about 5 or 6 hours. Coming back to this slide for a second, these are 2 cars. I don't know what these 2 cars are, but this is in the scrutineering building, and you can see the sides of this building. It's just a big convention center when we're not there. Here's another group of cars doing scrutineering. You see the Fiat up here. Obviously, this is outside before going in the building. And a Speedster there. And this car down here is a Fiat. It's, I think, just a fantastic looking car. Not the most comfortable car to ride in the summertime. The Mille's in June. It's 90-degree days. With all that glass, the driver has told me this car is just a killer in the summertime and really, really tough. Throughout the entire event, we're monitored is not the right term, really toured by the local motorcycle polizia. Rain or shine, they're with us. Same guys, the whole route that we drive. They stop traffic at the roundabouts. You go through a roundabout with 3 or 4 turns. The motorcycle cop will get off, stop traffic. at each turn, depending on when you're getting off, and then he'll speed up and get ahead of us again. Or alternatively, he'll lead a bunch of cars, 8, 10 cars, maybe for 20, 30 miles. And he'll drive right, when necessary, he'll drive right down the center of the road, like motorcycles typically do, splitting the lanes. And he'll wave the guy on the cars coming towards us off the road to the left, and he'll wave the cars coming at us the other direction, that are in our direction, going with us, off onto the shoulder to the right, and we're going right down the middle. It's kind of a weird feeling. It's the kind of thing that would never work in the United States, because American drivers would go batshit if somebody stopped them. Okay, and a lot of this is rush hour, people coming and going from work in the morning and the evening. Over there, what you get is this, and they're pumping their hands. Over here, this is what you get. It just couldn't happen here. These guys are great. You talk to some of these guys afterwards at the luncheon, and they love doing this event. And they put their slickers on when it rains, and they just keep going. This is from the luncheon before the start of the event on the day of the start. It's the Museum Mille. Just a smattering of old cars that I had taken. The first one here is, I'm pretty sure it's a Lancia Lambda. The second one is a Bugatti, and you'll see a number of Bugattis in this event, as I don't know if it was Francesca or somebody else said. Where do you see those in the United States? No American drives their old valuable cars, except idiots like me, and mine are not very valuable compared to those cars. But in Europe, people drive their multi-million-dollar cars. They don't think twice about it. And you'll see the Bugattis, you'll see the Ferraris, you'll see the old Alphas, of which I'm going to show you a number of pictures because I'm an Alpha guy. This is a 37 6C 2500. I had a 6C 2500, so it's kind of near and dear to me. This was also at the lunch spot before the race began. The typical small town you're going to go through, and looks like it's kind of late in the afternoon. There's not a lot of people out for this one. The car in front is a 29 6C 1500 Alpha. And here's every Alpha person's wish dream is this 8C 2300 going through just this, typical pedestrian countryside in Tuscany, just gorgeous stuff going through. This is me in 23, I think. 2 minutes from the start of the event, we're going up the castle and towards the castle in Brescia, and we're on a timing event, PC, which is one of the 90 to 100 scoring events. You basically go over an electronic strip, and you have to go anywhere from 30 seconds to maybe 2 or 3 minutes and hit the next strip, and they count these in hundredths of a second. No American, nobody but the Italians and the Dutch ever do well in these things. Anyway, we're about to go around almost a 360 turn here. I was a little scared that I wasn't going to be able to make the wall. You can't see it because it's off the picture, but I did make it. I didn't have to do a 2-point turn. I made it straight through. Yes, there are women in this event. And these 2 women, actually the woman on the right, is the wife of the gentleman that runs the group that I drive with. They monitor and take care of about 30 to 35 cars. She finished 20th this year out of the over 400 cars. So they're not just women doing it for fun. These are 2 women that are pretty darn serious. On the right, you see, there she is again with her little baby. And it rains in this event, and my Aston has a top, which is okay, and it doesn't leak too much like most Alpha tops do, but it doesn't have any windows, so you each get one leg wet, depending on which side you're sitting on. And you got these skinny little tires, so you're a little concerned about the slipping and sliding on the wet roads. Here's another picture from the luncheon, leaving the luncheon on the way to the start. I don't think my wife Beth would have gone for this sort of a honeymoon, but obviously this did. And I'd venture to say that there's at least 5 or 10 people in this room who know who this guy is, but he's going to go unnamed. Another Alpha 601750 is a Zagato Spider. This one's owned by the father of the guy that runs the Hut Camp team. It's a father and son duo. This gentleman and his wife, John's about 4 or 5 years younger than I am, and he's the only non-Italian typically who finishes in the top 10. They take this very seriously and they do a great job. I don't know what to say about this. We don't have this kind of scenery, right? And this is what you see all day long. You won't find these roads if you go to Italy. You won't find these roads if you go to France. You've got to be in these events. Here we are coming in to Rome. There's a Ferrari up here coming in, and it was dusk by the time we got there, probably about 6:30 or so in the evening. On the right, we've got huge crowds, 4 and 5 deep, going through whatever the small town is. They're getting ready to make a right turn around this corner here. You can't see the corner, and they had just come around the corner at the top of the spot there. Here's me and my Aspen again in another Tuscany scenery scene. They're just all day long. And another one of those 6C2500s. This is a Graber bodied car, which is very unusual. I think Graber only bodied 2, 3 of these cars. And that particular car is just gorgeous. Here we're coming through Lake Garda, which you can see in the background. In the foreground, where the flowers are, there are typically cafes and restaurants for, I don't know, a mile or two. About 100 yards further from where this photo was taken, a gentleman got up from his table, grabbed 2 beers off his table, and came running out to the car, handed them to the driver, and I was driving to the co-driver and myself, which we drank relatively quickly and handed them back to a cafe about 500 yards further down the road. They're all cheering and screaming. Another year, a waitress went up to a table in Garda again and grabbed a couple bottles of water out of an ice bucket that people had just bought, okay, and brought them out to us because it was 90-degree weather. I did say this was the original car, and on the left, this is 1957. This is the car in the race in 57. You probably can't see from this photo, that gentleman is wearing a coat and tie and a bowler hat. That was the way you did it then. And on the right, you see the modern version of the same car. It's actually painted in the same original, very dark green color. You can't obviously tell that from the black and white photo. And now I have lots of numerals and stuff on, but I still keep a number 1 up on the top, and there's a number 1 on the side, but the organization makes us put a piece of black tape across it to make sure there's no confusion that we're the number 1 car that year. In this year, it looks like they're the number 429 car, I think. The Hut Camp mechanics working on one of the cars and keeping them in the race. Last year they had 30-some cars, 33 I think, all but one finished. And the one that didn't finish because the driver was ill, not because the car was ill. And this is an event where typically 15 to 25% of the cars do not finish. It's really grueling. Not only is it grueling on us, it's tough on these cars. You're going through small towns, you're going through cobblestones, you're going up and over multiple mountains, and typically the weather could be in the 90s in June, it's gotta rain at least one day, you know, that's just kind of the way it is. On the right, we see the typical thing you're gonna see along the side of the road. Somebody with a 1,000 Mille sign. Here we got a little boy and his mom, very typical. You get 80-year-old housefrows in front of their farmhouses in the country, waving those signs as you go by. You know, everybody in the country turns out. Here we are. This is our car again. My co-driver is Mike Ingenio, who I think many of you might know, a big Alpha guy here locally. And we're just crossing on the left side. We're just crossing the finish line. And the woman there is handing out it's not a trophy, it's a medal that you put around your neck. The right-hand side photo is, again, you see Mike with his arms up in the air, and I'm shaking hands with the person behind her. We're finishing the event. Just after you come off the stage, Rutger Hogkamp, which is this gentleman right here, was spraying champagne across everybody in our team. All 30-some cars had finished. This particular Ferrari, this is a little aside about the mechanical teams here. That car broke its drive axle in the middle of day 3. They towed it to the hotel. They welded it together overnight. Mechanics don't get much sleep. And that car did day 4 and day 5 and finished the event. You know, think about how long your car's going to be in the shop here if something like that were to happen. You know, you might see it a couple months later. The other photo is, I think, is kind of a cool photo. It's another one of our team people, and they sprayed the champagne on it, and the bubbles are coming up. Here we are circling the Coliseum. This is a little earlier photo, I think. No, this is a later photo than the earlier one that was there. One of the unusual things about this photo, and what you may have seen in the video when he mentioned my car was going around the Coliseum, there wasn't anybody around. This is Italian rush hour, 6:30-ish, okay? 6:30, 7 o'clock. They closed the 6-lane road around the Coliseum for this event. That's how important this event is to the country. You know, would they close it for one of our presidents? Maybe, maybe not. But they close it when they go around the Coliseum. And then the right-hand photo is at the start of the event with the Air Force doing a flyover in Russia. You know, everything they do in this country centers around this event. This again is my car in an earlier one of the events. We're going on one of the Formula One tracks. This might be a Mola, I'm not sure. I can't remember. But what you see here is to keep people from driving fast as you can drive in an old car. They do these time trials on the track. So what you're seeing here is the stanchion, and then going across is an electronic strip, just like the kind we have in this country for doing whatever tests we do. And you have to go, you hit that strip at the beginning of the strip, and then you have to get to the end, as I said earlier, in X number of seconds, anywhere from some very short ones that are not much farther than from here to the parking lot, to some that are 2 and 3 minutes long. Some get a little tricky. You can't see the ends because there are corners in them. You don't know how fast to drive. You're not allowed to stop before you get to it. Your wheels must be rolling from the last 50 yards, I think. There's another pylon 50 yards farther back that is where the no-stop zone is, if you will. I like this photo because it's so typical of what you see over there. We got 3 great cars coming down this hill, around the curve on the top. This is a dirt road, lots of rocks and potholes and difficult corners. You get a lot of rocks bumping up against your car. You don't want to have a car you think is a show car here. But remember that my car is not terribly valuable by any of these standards, but there's guys driving 300 SLs. There's guys driving multi-million-dollar Bugattis, multi-million-dollar Alphas and Ferraris, like the one I showed you that just finished. And nobody in the United States would do that. You would never see anybody in the United States rally driving on a dirt road like this. They'd stop and argue about how to get around it. Just wouldn't happen. Another one in the small towns, you've got a Bugatti here, and it looks like probably an Alpha in front of it. People on both sides, cobblestones, not the smoothest road. I took this photo when I was a passenger from the Aston, looking out over the beautiful countryside. So actually, you can see at the top, sort of the top of the car, the windshield, and down here on the right, I'm not sure what that is, something inside the car. Another small town, people just walking through the town, watching the cars go by. Moving on to the Nuvolari, this site is scrutineering for the Nuvolari. It takes about 20% of the time that scrutineering takes at the Mille. They don't do a heck of a lot. If you get there, they figure you're okay. This is another one of the time trials, a PC, and you can actually see, I think, the rubber strip here. It's dark blue, dark green, that we're just getting ready to go over. You probably can't tell from this shot, but I'm looking out, trying to look out the side of the car to see when the wheel goes over that. This is the beginning of the Nuvolari event. This is before the event starts in the main square in Montour, where this event starts. I think this is a B20, and I'm pretty sure this is either an Alpha or an Aston in the background. The right-hand photo is coming through Siena. There's a quasi-road, which is typically a walkway along here, and Siena is, other than twice a year, is only a walking square. 2 times for the Mille and the Nuvolari, they allow cars there. In the Mille, they allow cars to park in the center area. Because it's such hallowed ground to them, they put tarps over that whole area so that, these cars leave a little bit of oil maybe. Not much, just a bit, but they don't want that to spoil the beautiful stones in their center square. We're being interviewed here, crossing the finish line, left side. Actually, the left side is the start, the green and white flag for the start, going over the start. The right side is my co-driver and I. This past September, I'm being interviewed by the woman there with the blonde hair and the sunglasses about, I don't know, whatever she had to say, whatever I had to say. Who can remember? It's so exciting when you get to the finish line. We were fortunate enough to win a trophy this year, and it was a trophy for being the first scoring team, I don't know how to say that right, of Americans. They give trophies by country and by actual scores. I mean, we were nowhere near the top of the scoring group, but we were the first American team to finish. So there we are in the square, sitting having a drink after the event. We're coming around the square in Siena again. This one's my car, just from a different angle than we saw the other one. Here's the Fiat coming off of the checkered flag there in the background from the Nuvolari this year, in September last year. And here you see some people wave with their hands, with the crowd. And these 2 folks are waving with their car doors. Both of them have the doors open. And here they are, that sort of shit-eating grin on her face, and sort of shit-eating grin on his face. George Jewett and Amy Edlund, they live in Marin, friends of ours who drove the field. A couple of the other small towns in the New Villari, notice the crowds are not nearly as thick and heavy as the crowds for the Mille. One of the big differences. And one of the things that, to me, sets it apart and makes the Mille the granddaddy of everything. It's the crowds, and it's the distance, even though you get exhausted. On the right side, we're coming into a castle, and I just like this photograph because of the archway coming into the castle on the Mille. This is moving on to the 23, to the Terra di Canosa, which I did with John Carapiet, and I think some of you may also know John from Marin. John and I are looking at the maps. Before we started out, we're in the parking lot before the event starts. Didn't do us a hell of a lot of good. Within the first 2 kilometers, we were so off course. We must have gone 5 or 10 kilometers off course, and eventually got a phone call from the organization saying, "Your car is lost." I said, "I know I'm lost, I just don't know how to get back." So for the next 10 or 15 minutes, we're on the phone with them, and they're guiding us back to essentially 1 kilometer from the start to put us back on the track. We got lost once or twice further that day. John wasn't the best of navigators. But it's tough because you don't have as many people on the side of the road. It's difficult to get lost in the Mille because there's always people there. The first year I did it, we missed a turn, and this is what you saw. We didn't get 100 yards, and we backed up and made the turn. But you don't have as many people on these events, so if you miss a turn, you can miss it for a while. This picture here is the beginning, just having come out of that parking lot, the beginning of the New Villari, the beginning of the Terra di Canosa. And on the right-hand side, we're coming up, I'm pretty sure this is coming up from the afternoon. I don't know, Beth, you may remember where this was. You were petrified because we were in the mountains, and you got this gorgeous scenery of the ocean and this castle in the background, and you kept saying, "I can't see a thing. The top's in my way. I'm looking at the map. You know, I'm trying to drive through some of these switchbacks, so I missed most of this one as well." But you see it. You do see a good portion of them, even though you're going to miss a fair number. Not unusual to see school kids let out of school for the cars to come by. This is a Terra di Canosa. This was a scary tunnel. It's about a mile or a mile and a half long in the Carrera marble area. Very narrow. It was actually a dry day, but you can't tell. The roadway's wet because this is so far underground it never dries out. It's so dark in there that I had to have all 4 of my headlights on and still couldn't see very well. And very, very narrow, 1 lane. You know, I was scared. I'm scared that if the car slipped at all, I'd easily go into one of these rock slides. But it's kind of a cool photo, I think, with the other cars behind me. Here's my car again coming in for lunch at Cinque Terre. We're looking for a parking place, and you see all these other cars that got there, and lunch was at one of these cafes along here. I love this photo on the left. It was raining that day, and this was in Carrera again, and I just love the way the water is spraying up from our car, and the car behind you can't even see the car because the water's spraying so much. And then on the right is a sunny day, and you see Amy with her arms up in the air cheering, and that's where they parked the car at Cinque Terre for the lunch. This is leaving the square in Cinque Terre after lunch on the left, and then on the right is going up the hill after Cinque Terre and you see the waterway here and this island out here. Just, again, some of you may have been to the Cinque Terre area. It's just a pretty gorgeous area. I mean, there are no areas that are not gorgeous. Double negative there in this event. Somebody mentioned Luca earlier, I think. This is Luca. Not only do you see the band on both sides of the road for us, but you have to understand where this is. Luca is a walled town. The wall's probably 20 to 40 feet high, surrounding the entire town. Typically, it's a walking or a bicycle event. Again, if the Mille comes through here, and they do occasionally, or if the Nuvolari or the Canosa come through here, they let us drive on top of the wall. So if you were to look over the side, you're going to be looking down 20 to 40 feet to you know, depending on which side you're on, the inside of the town or the outside of the town. This was from the Canosa. The first year I did it, my spark plugs carboned up, and the guys had to change my plugs on day one, after we got lost once or twice, as I mentioned earlier. This one over here on this side is coming out of Carrera, going up the hill, leaving Carrera, and you see the quarry, and one of the quarries here in the background. This is actually coming down the other side of that mountain, having left Carrera, and you just get one of these great little hill towns, and we're just tootling along a string of cars. This is one of my favorite cars. It's a very unusual 135 MM Sport Racer. I saw one just sold recently in an auction in Europe in the $1.25 million, $1.5 million range. This gentleman driving is French, and it says in the caption, he has refitted the car with hand controls. He's 100% paralyzed from the waist down. His wife carries I don't know where it fits, folds up in the back of the wheelchair, folds up in the back. She goes around when he stops, and he can't walk at all. He told me that he does 3 rallies a month, every month in the summertime. And his wife is really a good sport, and she goes along with him. And it's just a gorgeous course. It's one of 2 or 3 or 4 of this particular model made. And I think this particular car had some Formula 1, they had Formula 1 back then, but Le Mans type races, yeah, back then, and was in the running. There's an Alfa Zagato 1750 parked at the hotel that afternoon. Really nice Belgian couple that I've seen on multiple events, and we've become somewhat friendly. This photo here is at the afternoon coffee spot. We had parked. I think Beth may have gone in to get coffee, or no, she was taking a photo. But the reason I love this is this bridge is just gorgeous, I think, going over the small river here. And this is towards the end of the Canosa. You see the Fiat in front of me. I took this from the driver's seat. And then you see, half a dozen cars in front. And I'm pretty sure this building is a place we had lunch, isn't it, Beth? I think we're going to take a right turn and go into that lunch place there after we took the checkered flag and they had the award ceremony in there. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. A couple of more Fiat shots that are coming up. It's a very similar shot to the one of the Aston Martin coming up out of the Cinque Terre area, looking out over the island and the water. And then the same shot, actually with probably the same school kids, just an hour later, different class, with the Fiat in it. Cars in all these events start by age, oldest first. The Terra di Canosa and the Nuvolari run the cars up into the 70s. The Mille, as it was said before, stops at 1957. And for these 2 events, it doesn't have to be a car that participated in the original event, because there was no original event. The Canosa is only about 10 years old. I'm not sure, if anybody knows what this is, I don't know what that is. I don't know what town it is. It could be the other side of the square in Siena, but I'm not sure. I just think it's a good, neat photo. And here's the Fiat coming out of the lunch break, or actually going into the lunch break in Cinque Terre. This gentleman's trying to find a parking place. Don't forget what we have in our own backyard. I did the California Mille twice when Martin was still alive. The right-hand side, we're up in the Sierras. The left-hand side, we're in the Gold Country. And I want you to think about the fact that the Mille runs what they call the USA Warm-Up Mille, and it's in Northern Virginia. They've been running it since 2017. They do a couple of other ones now. They're doing one in Florida next month, I think. Interesting, fun event. You actually get a chance to meet the people that run the Mille. That's where I first met Francesca, and we became somewhat friendly. And they bring all their people over to do this the right way and teach people how to score in these events. They did one in China, which one of our friends did this year, and they do one in Austria. I think they do one in the Middle East. Now, it's kind of a money-making machine. They started doing these in hopes of getting Americans to apply, but even when the Americans apply, they don't know as much about it as the Europeans do, so you might not have the right car, you might not apply correctly. Your chances of getting in are okay if you've got the right car. That's pretty much the comparative analysis. There's two other events I'll talk about that I haven't been on. One is the Canosa folks who run a whole bunch of events. Run one in the Dolomites in Italy, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's in June, and I've been thinking about going if I can fit the calendar right. It's typically 7,000 to 7,500 feet, and I know somebody who's done events in the Dolomites, and it actually makes all these other events and the scenery look second rate, if you can imagine that. The other one is an event in Austria, which is the one in the Dolomites is not a regularity event. It's not a scored event. The one in Austria is a regularity event, like the three I mentioned. And it goes through all the areas of the Sound of Music. And again, some friends of mine, the Aston Martin folks that I do a lot of stuff with, have done that. That's kind of it. I'm open to having some questions. I think I took a little more time than I wanted, but let's go ahead.
How much do these events cost you?
A shitload. The Mille is very, very expensive. I've been renting the Fiat in the plus $60,000 range. And the next lowest person who rents a Fiat, rents anything in the Mille is start at 100. And I don't make very much money on 60. Okay, I barely make enough money to make sure the car continues to run. You got exchange rate issues and so forth. The other events are more in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. The Mille is very expensive because it's such a huge event. They've got 1,000 people that volunteer or get paid to do this. I think the cops probably get paid to do their motorcycle thing. I'm not sure. It could be volunteer. Yeah. I know it's an honor to be chosen to be one of those motorcycle cops. You get one of these watches, a Chopard watch, which they give you, right into the entrance fee. It's maybe a $6,000 watch. So you feel like you got something for your money. I won't do these events without a mechanics team because these cars break down. You know, no matter how good shape your car is, I mean, the 57 Fiat is on Medicare, for God's sake. They break down. And the Fiat 600 was never meant to last this long. You know, it was a Fiat, it was a Toyota or a Honda of today. You know, as I said, they fixed a drive shaft for crying out loud. And they got this guy back on the road to finish. They've done repairs. The Fiat has had, I think, more on-road repairs than my Aston Martin. It's broken 2 axles. We've been able to find, they've been able to find an axle on the side of the road from some pick-apart kind of place. Fix it, put it back in the race. I blew a rear wheel bearing, and I limped into a town, and the mechanics are two guys to a van. One guy stayed with me, took the wheel off, got the bearing out. The other guy went to an auto parts store, and he bought 3 or 4 different size bearings because, you know, a bearing cost $1 or $2. Because he didn't know what size bearing to buy, because he left as soon as I got there. He left. The other guy pulled the wheel. He came back, put the new bearing in, and we're back on the road. You know, how long is it going to take you to put a wheel bearing in your modern car today? You can leave it at the shop for at least a week, right?
Sure.
The prices are all over the place. I don't charge very much because I'm not in business to do that. Generally, the Fiat's been used by friends of mine or acquaintances. You know, Gary sent out a flyer this year that most of you probably got, telling that I was looking for somebody to take a Fiat. It's not a business to me, and I wouldn't feel right charging $100,000 and making 40 grand. That's not my DNA. Yeah, other questions? Over here.
I've been to the Mille many times, and it's a spectator event as well. I never drove in it, but you know, cars you can follow them and do a lot of stuff, but it's a marvelous Italian event.
I thought that bit in the video where they interviewed that woman and her husband who do a rally the Mille week, and they drive around the area. I thought that was a really interesting thing. I'd never heard of that. I saw a blog, I think after my second or third one, that said well over 2 million people stand by the side of the road. In the United States, you know, that's not a big deal, right? They could get 1 million people for the Indy 500, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But Italy's population is under 50 million. So over 2 million people is, you know, pretty big number there of the population. And as I said, you know, Mayor said, you get old ladies and young kids and adults and teenagers, both in the towns, which you saw mostly, but in the countryside, in the bloody rain. It could just be pouring rain. And there's people out there waving their 1,000 Liberty signs and cheering people on. I would never stand out in the rain to watch a car go by. I don't know, maybe you guys are more avid than I am. But I wouldn't do it. Somebody else said that. Gary? Well, there's 2 ways that I got the pictures. First of all, I've written a number of articles, which some of you may have seen, about the Mille. And the Mille has a lot of professional photographers they use. And I had asked the Mille last year if they would send me a bunch of alpha pictures because I read an article that was published in the Alfa Romeo National Club magazine in November. And so they sent me, I don't know, a dozen alpha pictures, and I picked out 4 or 5 of them. And they also sent me some of my own car. A couple of those were taken by the Mille people. The team that I go with also has a professional photographer. The piece you showed earlier that probably nobody was watching during lunch the video was done by the Howard County group. And they they do a piece on each of their 30-some cars. And they send us a book that's part of it. And the same thing is true of the Canosa. And then there's guys you can buy photos from. I've been buying photos from the same guy at all three events actually every year. So there is a smattering of difference, mostly professional shots. Yeah. Over here.
Kind of locked in now that you've done this 5 times, or is there pressure or demand from other cars, or were you ever liable to reach a spot where they wouldn't let you drive?
Yes and no. The Fiat is as close to a guaranteed entry as you can get because of its heritage. Actually, the Fiat in 22 was accepted, and I was not accepted in the Aston Martin, despite the fact that the Aston had driven in 5 previous Milles, but not the original. It was accepted again in 23 and 24. Typically, they don't like to get too many of the same model. In 22, for some reason, a large number of Aston Martin Le Mans, or not just Le Mans, but pre-war Aston Martins applied, and there were 5 that were admitted, so I didn't get admitted. I've got a pretty good chance of getting admitted just because I know these people pretty darn well at this stage. As I say, Francesca reached out to me for the video. I've been corresponding with her since the video. I do these articles for them that try to promote them in the United States. I try to build up my coin, if you will, with the organizers. I know the CEO, I know the chairman of the board. I've introduced her to people at the Peterson. I've introduced her to people at the, I always forget the guy's name, the doctor in Philadelphia who died a year or 2 ago. Yeah, introduced her to them. So they do look out for me. And the Fiat is pretty, when I say 100%, nothing's 100%, but it's about as close to 100 as you can get, for a couple reasons. One is, if you have a Fiat 500 that was in the original Mille, you're not guaranteed a spot because they made that car for like 20 years. And there were hundreds of them that ran in the original Mille. Well, they're not going to let 50 Fiat 500s in. So they might let 4 or 5 in a year. The 600 was first made in 56. So 57 was actually the first year it was eligible and the only year because that was the end. So I don't have a lot of competition for the same model car. I tried to get my 1900 in when I bought it and failed. I actually took the car, I was on the waiting list. I bought the car in Europe. I left it there. I took it to Brescia. I was on the waiting list. The trouble with the 1900 is the Alpha factory typically puts 4 or 5 1900s in, and that takes up pretty much all the space for a 1900. I think I could have gotten my 6C 2500 in, but that was really a show car. I don't think I would have taken it. In the back.
1,300 miles is a lot more than 1,000.
Yeah.
Why did the route grow, and is there any pressure to get back there?
You understand what this is? This has become a huge, huge business to them, and they charge towns to go through the town. So if your town wants to be a sponsor, and the mayor comes out wearing, a thing, and the brass band comes out, and the mayor shakes your hand as you drive by, all this sort of stuff. They pay for that. So the more small towns they can put in, the more money they can take in. Just like they have the modern Ferrari event today. It doesn't usually get in our way because they go out earlier and they start usually from Lake Garda, and we start in Brescia, so they're an hour ahead of us. At our speed, they're an hour ahead of us. So they're not usually in our way, but they pay a lot of money to do that. And the same thing with I think it's the Mercedes, not the Porsche here, but I think it's the Mercedes, that have their own modern supercar event. And I think it's all about the money. And they added the 5th day in 23. So they gave more towns in. And it was a disaster. We went through Milan at rush hour, 90 degrees. Cars are overheating left and right. You know, these cars tend to overheat, right? Rush hour, traffic moving like the Bay Bridge at rush hour, okay? And they didn't have any police support. The city of Milan didn't give us any police support to stop traffic and move cars along. Everybody complained about that. I don't think they'll go through Milan again. Somebody else? Over here? Sure.
What about fuel stops? How do you refuel those cars?
Just like any other, you stop at a gas station. One of the problems in Italy is that our credit cards don't work in a lot of places because in Europe you have to have a PIN number on your credit card, and we don't have PIN numbers on our Visa cards here. You have a PIN number on your bank card, and that's typically the only thing that will work in Europe, and even that doesn't work sometimes, so you gotta have enough euros to pump into the machine, because most gas stations in the areas of Italy anyway that these events go through are unmanned. So you can't go in and give your credit card to somebody. And I've stood at these machines and sworn frequently. My co-driver has sworn at the machines. You know, sometimes you can get somebody else who drives up who feels sorry for you and they can translate what you're supposed to be doing, assuming you don't speak English. But I mean, there's gas stations everywhere.
Nice presentation, thanks. The question I have is, all 400 cars stop at the same spot every night?
Yes, and we all stop in the same city.
800 rooms are needed? Or?
Well, there are multiple hotels. There's usually 5 or 6 different hotels in the city, and they could be 5 or 10 miles apart. And then you all have to get to the same starting spot in the morning, and you start in the same starting order every day. If somebody drops out, there's just a blank spot there. They start 3 cars per minute, so to get all 400 some cars started, you know, it's a little over 2 hours. And the same is true of the other events. They start 3 cars a minute.
One last question, and I agree, great presentation, thank you. Do you leave the Alpha and the Fiat in Italy for these rallies, or do you bring them back?
The Aston Martin lives in England, where I bought it, and they take care of it for me. And the Fiat lives in Holland, right outside Amsterdam, with the Houtkamps, which is where I bought that. And I also bought that MG from the Houtkamps, which I sold a few years later. And they take care of that car for me. And I'll have both cars shipped to Italy for the Canossa in May, because I have some friends, actually they're here, who are going to drive the Canossa in May. And I may leave, well, I know I'm going to leave the Aston there because I'm doing an Aston Martin event in France in September. And I may leave the Fiat there because I've had some interest in doing the new Valaria in September already, even though I can't tell what it's going to cost because they haven't announced it yet. But he did it, this guy did it a couple of years ago with his partner, and now she wants to do it with her daughter. He called me about 2-3 weeks ago, and I said, you know, nobody's spoken to me about it, but I can't tell you what it's going to cost. This is what it was last year, but it's probably going to be 5 or 10% more. So they'll stay there and then go back to their homes after that. I've met a guy over there through a friend here who's both a mechanic and he picks the cars up. He's Italian. He drives to England, he drives to Amsterdam, brings both cars, he stores them at his place, and then picks them up and delivers them to the